Hello, Mr. James. Welcome to Anatomy of a Rumor. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problems. Look, I'm really excited about today's episode because I know you're someone who's got a very rational approach to marketing, someone who's very level-headed when it comes to marketing. So I'm excited to get to pick your brain today.
Yeah, no worries.
All right,
Let's do it.
cool. Before we get going, John, for the audience, I just want you to give a quick rundown of your career. How do you relate to the topic of B2B marketing? What's been your experience with marketing and what's your journey been in marketing?
Well, I haven't really done anything else, professionally, anyway. I've had lots of jobs, different industries, but yeah, look, I was formally trained at university back when formal training was quite key and respected. There's a bit of a conjecture these days whether you need it or not, like depending on which tweets you follow. But anyway, the point is, I was versed in strategic marketing back in the day at university. Then during university, I was working for work placements. So this was kind of putting the theory into practice while I was studying. So I did that for a market research firm, a superannuation or annuity firm, and a manufacturer of trade goods as well. So very, very different businesses. And then since then, lived in 4 different countries, worked there, digital agencies, client side, B2G, B2B, B2C, flipping back and forth, started my own agency, lots of B2B clients in there, similar to sort of similar to your client base from what you described. So very much applied knowledge, built that agency up, then moved to San Francisco, working in a growth role there, growth manager for a startup. So before that, I was working with some tech clients as well. So I sort of then went fully into the SaaS tech world, then came back just prior to COVID, did some advisory work in my own platform. A lot of advisory board work these days, so that's like giving advice to executives on how to make better decisions around a lot of the things we may talk about today, and a lot of those are B2B. So yeah, you can ask me anything and I'll give you a pretty detailed answer.
Excellent. It's well. First of all, you look actually quite young for someone with that much experience, and I'm also shocked that you have so much hair working in marketing for so long. You still got so much hair on your head.
It's fading pretty rapidly, so looks can be deceiving. Let's just put it that way.
Right, cool. You mentioned in there that you're working. You have your own platform as well. So, are you a SaaS founder as well?
Yeah, but it's taking second fiddle to all the other work that I do, which brings in cash. So it's been a bit of a project the last 2 years, but my own foray into producing my own media and podcasts and things like that is sort of the part of the bigger picture that I'm slowly building in the back end. And some of the client work that I do obviously is quite applied. So I've been testing out some of the things that I'm then scaling inside a SaaS platform that will be, that's always pending release. So let's just put it that way.
So yeah, it's a good training ground for you. I mean, you can take that knowledge and apply it to customers and be more relatable. So definitely a very interesting move there. John, before we get started, I mean, I wanna get your philosophy around marketing across the audience, and I wanna give them an idea of how you think about marketing, right? So briefly, give us an overview of what marketing is to you, especially in B2B. What is marketing?
Well, this is a good question because if you ask anybody, and I do this quite often, like accountants or people on flights when I'm transiting to cities and doing work, and I ask anybody not in marketing what it is, they pretty much 99% of the time say it's advertising or it's some form of promotion, or some of them may say sales. And traditionally, that hasn't been the case. But then, obviously, there's programs like Mad Men and all this advertising sort of agency-centric thing. So a lot of their only exposure to marketing has been the comms or advertising portion of the marketing discipline. For me, I'm a bit of more of that sort of 4Ps style thing because that's what I was trained in back in the day. And that's also what growth is in a SaaS context. So in the tech world, marketing was a dirty word, so they rebranded it to growth. But essentially, it's marketing. In fact, the guy who coined the phrase growth hacking is a formally trained marketer. A lot of people don't know this. So a lot of these tech people who hate marketing but like growth hacks and growth don't realize that was the case. Anyway, so the point is, marketing for me is the function of business that concerns itself with market and everything to do with the market. And that's really critical because without that, I would call it almost an unnatural force within the organization. What happens by default is that everybody else in the organization avoids exposure to the market and just sort of does their own thing, their own little department. And it's you unnaturally as a marketer have to bring that force back into the organization, which people don't like because it validates or invalidates some of the assumptions they have about what things work and what don't, and how important their job role is, and how much the consumer notices things and doesn't. So it actually tends to cause a lot of friction because of that nature. Classic example, maybe I'm a founder or I'm a tradie and I started a business, and I think because I'm really good at what I do that, I have this really quality process, and that the better quality it is, the more the customer's going to notice, and they'll talk about it and then tell their friends, and they're going to be successful. But that often is wrong, and through the cursed knowledge, a lot of the stuff the customers don't even notice. They don't appreciate it. They sort of go off of like a vibe or very piecemeal information. So if I was a marketer and I would know that truth and I'm bringing it back to the founder or the owner of the business and told him, well, this actually they don't notice that, they don't care. So why are you spending all that time? They can get really affronted by that reality and may sort of push back on that. So that's just one kind of example. But for me, it's just bringing the force of the market back into the business and concerning yourself with the market at all times. And this is expressed through the product offering, which is elements of brand and people and everything. It's pricing, it's packaging, it's the positioning of the offering in the consumer's mind. This brand sort of overlaying all of that. There's the promotion side, which we kind of already talked about, which is what everyone fixates on. But for me, if you get pricing, you get product, you get distribution right, you almost don't need promotion. Like they always say, a good product sells itself. It's not always true, but I think what can get overlooked is those other fundamentals, which are really key.
You mentioned an interesting point in there that B2B tech particularly is obsessed with growth, and growth somehow tends to be a different thing than marketing. I don't align with that mindset. But what do you think? Why do you think that mindset is? What is the difference between growth and marketing? For me, it's all the same. How come is it different for other people?
Yeah, look, I asked the guy who created the word growth hacking, Sean Annells. I asked him this question, and there's a really good video on his response. But let me give my take on it. I see growth as more of a mindset. It's part mindset, which is the growth mindset, which is basically, I don't know everything, and I'm going to find out. I'm going to test and learn and iterate and improve over time in the circular kind of feedback loop process. And maybe I don't know what I'm doing at the beginning, but I'll find out and I'll get better and better and better. And then eventually I'll go to this point where that process is infallibly going to grow the business or grow whatever objective or achieve whatever objective that I set out to do. And that requires a key difference that a lot of non-growth people miss, which is this traditional marketing mindset where we go, let's do a campaign. Let's do this thing, and it's really cool, and design, and video, and blah, 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 win an award, and then it stops. And they go, let's do another campaign. And then let's do another campaign. Whereas growth is always on, it's iterative, it's constant feedback loop cycle. So that's why the measurement and research piece is really key. And sometimes I think you need to have that maturity, and we're coming back to the growth mindset of proving yourself wrong and proving your own opinions and assumptions at the beginning of that process wrong, and having the maturity to deal with that, because that can be quite affronting to the political standing you have maybe within the organization, which is why a lot of traditional marketers don't follow that process. So a lot of the software world is very much steeped into that growth mindset and that test and learn environment. And that's probably my biggest way to explain the difference. You'll notice traditional marketers are very advertising agency based. It's all campaigns. It's all about winning an award or having a cute video or something like that. And, it's a political piece. It's a project that then the head of the marketing department can own and go, hey, to the next employer, which they want to go to, a bigger brand or, a more senior position. Hey, I did this piece of work and look how cool it was. And here's a video and it's really well produced and everything. And a growth mindset person will go, well, yeah, but what did that do? Did your revenue figures go above baseline? What was the profit margin? How many customers acquired? All these kind of like more fundamental bottom line questions that the owner of the business or the finance people in the business and the CEO actually care about. So that's my sort of best explanation of the difference between the two.
Excellent. So but when we talk about that, I as someone who's in the market doing some of this stuff, so I see a place for both. I see a place for iterative testing, A/B testing, and I see a place for creating a very good brand campaign and launching it on mass media as well. But is there a good balance? I think the ideal path is where you actually combine the both. So what is the right mix of both?
Yeah, look, there tends to be this polarization in the industry and certain circles, depending on who you talk to, about this performance versus brand, or short-term salesy sort of stuff versus longer-term brand stuff. The problem is, if you ask any marketer or 10 different marketers what a brand is, you're going to get 10 different questions because nobody can actually define what it is. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, there is no such thing as performance or brand. What we're trying to describe here is the difference between targeting people who are in market ready to buy right now, which is a very, very small portion of the market, generally 0.1% or 5% maximum at any one time, versus things that may affect the consumer's memory long term, so that when they come in market, maybe months or years down the track, they remember you and can associate you and your brand and your product with the thing they want to buy, and then they reach back out to you or whatever, and they make a purchase decision. So for me, it's a question of time lag rather than channels. What the advertising industry has done really well is that when Google and Facebook came in and threatened their advertising dollars, they then created sister agencies that were called performance agencies, which is where this term comes from. And in those performance agencies, most of the channels were Facebook and Google ads and SEO and digital, whatever, generally driven by an analytical program. Yeah, all that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with those. Those are very effective. But they want to separate the brand work, which is higher profit margin and a bit more glamorous, and the things they can do to win big accounts, versus the essential but maybe less glamorous channels that are more harvesting demand at any one point in time, maybe at lower cost as well, and don't require glamorous videos. So there's this polarization that doesn't really exist. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I see brand versus channels. So coming back to your point about campaigns versus growth, you're right. You should have things that you do for a period of time, and then you test them, see if they work or not. And then you either dump them and do another idea, or you keep it going. And there's other stuff that you always keep on all the time because you know it's working. So it's kind of like, if you've worked with agencies, sometimes they have a BAU or business as usual campaign that's always going, that's already been validated. And they have a test campaign, and they go, well, I've got this idea, let's see if it works. And then you take the learnings from the test campaign, you put it into BAU, and you keep doing that. And that's more of the growth process. So yeah, I agree with you, but also it's important not to polarize the distinction between the two.
Exactly, and I think we've done somewhat over segmentation in the marketing department, where we've made there's now a term called performance branding. I mean, come on, how much shit are you going to generate? Like demand gen, lead gen, performance brand, growth hacks. I mean, it's all marketing. It's all marketing. Just keep it simple, really. And I think this growth mindset stems from another problem, which is more sort of, I believe it's a philosophical problem of instant gratification, which in not just in marketing, where tech is responsible for humans needing instant gratification in a lot of departments of life. Like, we want our food delivered ASAP. We want our groceries delivered. We can't wait for anything anymore. I think the same thing as tech has done to marketing as well, with direct response and digital marketing, hasn't it?
Yeah, look, I think that's an important point you make there. There is and this is the best excuse for every brand campaign that actually doesn't produce sales. I want to be really clear here. Any brand campaign that you release should increase sales, actually more than a performance campaign, if you want to brand them that way. But you should get immediate sales uplift. If you're not, there's something completely wrong. That brand campaign is completely off. So the excuse sometimes of things not working is like, oh, it's a brand campaign. And any failure campaign is branded as a brand campaign. So that's number one. But yeah, you raise a good point in terms of you need, as a responsible business owner or executive, you need to show that there's return on some of the expense. And marketing tends to attract one of the biggest expense line items. So it attracts the accountant or the CFO or finance person's attention always. So it's always very sensitive. And I agree, you need to get some return from that investment. But you need to understand how long your sales cycle is. And you need to have a mixture of things that definitely produce sales right now and things that will sort of build and slowly, with this nonlinear growth effect, compound over time. And I think you need both. It's like what mixture of the two and how much we allocate to both buckets. And it's really key to have both. If you don't have one or the other, then it's not really going to work. But yeah, there's so many other elements. I think it's really important to understand that, though.
Exactly. So I think we've established your philosophy over marketing. We've had a good debate about just marketing and growth. I think we've established that there's over-segmentation for no real reason. There's a place for everything, and there is a good way to do. Another thing I want to touch upon that's very confused often, well, I've seen it confused, is positioning and branding. How do you? What's the difference between the two, right? What is positioning basically? Let's first talk about that. What is positioning? How do you see positioning?
So positioning can be at a brand or a product level, number one. So let's just put that aside for now. But positioning is just, I would call it the pitch of your offering. So if you've ever done a sales pitch before, I could be selling a toothbrush, but the way that I sell it, the way that I put it in the customer's mind, and everything that goes with that pitch, if you will, is kind of what I would call positioning. So ultimately, you want to be differentiating generally a commoditized product offering in a slightly different way. And coming back to your point, that's where all these terms come from, because agencies and departments and growth or whatever are just trying to position themselves in different areas of the market, but it's all essentially the same thing. So look, positioning is just where do you want to be in the mind of your customers? Think of it, I think Kimberly Whitler says it's the best. She likens it to, have you played the game Battleships before? The board game?
I played Battlefields, not Battleships.
Battleships is just like a board game, and you put your ships down in certain grids. So it's A to F or whatever, and 1 to 3, 9 down the Y and X axis, and they do the same thing. There's a divider in between, so you can't see where they put their ships. And then you fire artillery shells, metaphorically, via coordinates. So you go, A3, and then if your ship is covering part of that quadrant, then that's one hit, and you have different sized ships and stuff like that. And the point is, you are in a market full of competitors, and you have to decide, where do I want to be in that, so that I'm not getting directly compared to other competitors, and what space can I own and defend within that broader market. And that's a very nuanced discussion, but I mean, coming back to maybe some of your clients who are tradies or whatever, like, chippy, why would I pick one chippy over the other chippy? Like, they'll basically do the same thing, and then they go, well, I'm a better quality one, or I can do it faster, or I can do it cheap, or I use this method, or I have this team, or whatever. So as a customer, let's reverse it and go, how would I choose between options when I'm faced with direct competitors? And that's why positioning is quite important. It can be something as simple as, I don't know, we have really responsive customer service, and we're really known for it. We'll be on time, we'll do the job when we say we do, and we're very reliable. And that could be a defensible position, given that, some traders go the other way and, try and stuff projects. So that's positioning.
So positioning, can positioning from a B2B tech perspective, positioning could be from a point of view, or does it have to have that product feature, or do you only position yourself based on the differentiation within the product, or could it just be point of view? I mean, positioning could be based on point of view, can't it?
So there's different ways you can do it, and this is where we need to make the distinction between brand level, which affects the whole organization and all the products that come under the organization, versus a specific product offering. So maybe you could have one brand that has multiple products, and they're all positioned in different ways. Anyway, that aside, let's just go, how do we position is kind of the question you're asking here, and there is no really right answer here. To not do positioning, though, that doesn't provide a value benefit to the organization is quite key here. So it's more about if the customer realizes your positioning or not, that is the difference. So I could say that I'm better or quicker or whatever, but if it's not the case, and if the customer doesn't perceive it to be the case, then it's all mute. So it's really important that it is taken from a customer perspective. But yeah, some people do product feature sort of things. Some people do the vibe or branding perspective in terms of like, this is our energy. You'll probably notice with your client base as well that you maybe attract certain personalities or businesses in certain phases of their life or certain cultures that sort of just gel with you and your team and the personalities within your team, and you'll tend to attract more of them because of that, and the ones who don't choose you will be of the opposite persuasion. So it's kind of important, and as a business leader you might sort of see those things happening and double down on that and go, okay, well, I want to protect this niche because all my customers are kind of like this, and they kind of resonate with this thing that I'm doing and the way we pitch this, and they kind of like my vibe on this, and I joke around a bit, and they like, or maybe they like my service staff and are all pretty attractive, whatever it is. And you kind of just double down on your own, and you sort of like strengthen that feature within your product offering and make it very apparent to new prospects.
So you lead me to a very interesting point. So you said positioning should make sense to the customer, right? And when we talk about that, there's a thought comes to my mind that positioning informs segmentation, or is it the other way around?
So, I mean, this part of the strategy that I do is called SDP, which is segmentation, targeting, positioning. Basically, what that means is that we've got a big market, and most businesses, let's just say, they're almost in a state of perfect competition. Your agency is one of thousands, right? Most businesses are like this. It's very rare to be in a free space, a blue ocean, monopoly. So let's just discount that. So most people have way more competitors than they're willing to admit to. So then within that, you then want to go, okay, well, look, this is my total market, which is like billions or trillions of dollars. Let's go, I've got this sort of resources and this is what I do. So let's take that portion of the market. That's called, segmented the market based on some criteria. And then I'll go, that's my target market. Okay, so then you're taking a very large TAM, or total addressable market, and you're making it smaller into a SAM, so a serviceable addressable market, or target market, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. A smaller portion of the bigger pie. And then you go, this is kind of what I'm then going to project to that smaller portion of the market, positioning. And hopefully that resonates with that smaller portion because I've already done some tests, hopefully. I'm not just making a blind guess. And therefore, I will be more defensible, more able to acquire more people out of that smaller pool from the greater pie. And they'll be more effective. And then it's an effectiveness and efficiency advantage to my expenditure of resources within my marketing department.
Excellent. So that's pretty clear that you segment first, you identify, you get very clear on the audience, and then you work on the positioning, not the other way around.
Yeah, it comes back to just a resource constraint, right? Like you can't be everything to everybody, and if you are, you become nothing to nobody in particular.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, I see a lot of even just talking about the digital marketing agency space, right? There's so many generic digital marketing agencies, and they sell. I mean, they're profitable, they're making a bit of money, they've got a few clients, but they're not substantial businesses, or they're not really cutthroat, innovative businesses. To be something of some significant mass, I think you have to be a bit more clear on who you serve.
It's true, but also it depends what's your objective here. You want to carve out a defensive niche and sell, become really big, or you just want to harvest some cash. And you can do that through distribution deals and preferentials and networks and things like that, and just harvest cash and never be very innovative, but kind of like Google. But you just insert yourself into the pipes of the bigger ecosystem and just harvest a margin off that, and that can work. I think sometimes the mistake with positioning, targeting, and segmentation is that people think that they need to be really unique and really different, and it's not always the case. You can just be reliable and standardized, and that could be your really lucrative positioning. Okay, well, it's not the best agency in the world, but I know that won't get ripped off, and things will be done on time, and if I need to call them, they'll respond within this time, and you can be the reliable kind of Volvo car in the agency world, if you know what I mean. Not going to impress anybody, but it's not going to break down. So that is a positioning angle that you could always go with, but anyway.
Well, I would disagree with that Volvo point. I mean, they're producing some killer cars, man.
They have changed. They have definitely evolved, as you've probably seen, so...
Okay, so coming to the next point, marketing. The function of marketing. who is it meant to serve, John? Especially in a B2B environment. Is it meant to serve the customer, or is it meant to serve the sales department?
I kind of open a can of worms, but like, generally it serves egos within the organization. Generally the ego of the marketer themselves, the ego of the agency supplying the service, or the founder or owner of the business. That's where a lot of marketing, to be honest with you, where a lot of marketing spend goes. It's like, I want to be on Google. My friends are on Google. They say it's really good, so I want to be on Google. And that's kind of how decisions are made. They're not always made very strategically. So you get a lot of human influence here that shouldn't be discounted. But yeah, coming back to your question, like, who should it serve? I mean, in a perfect world, it should serve the customer. You should be a conduit and a representative of the market, like I mentioned before, and bring that force back within the organization. Where it gets tricky is perhaps, and where it gets distorted from that purist sort of view of the function, is where it sort of makes people internally feel uncomfortable, or personal incentives get in the way. And really, is that market incentivized to grow the company? Do they earn more money if things work out? Yes or no? There's a lot of caveats to that within every organization, and you need to be very mindful about what that marketer is really incentivized and motivated to achieve. Sometimes it's just, make me look good, get me on Google, make sure that my ads appear so that the owner sees them on Saturdays, even though nobody buys on Saturdays. Like, crazy stuff like that I've figured out is quite important. So I think that internal element can never be ignored. But I mean, yeah, ultimately we should be that voice of reason and helping other people in the departments understand better the market, the needs, what makes them buy at greater frequency at a higher price, to give a very blunt and concise answer.
Exactly. And the reason I ask this is because a lot of the times I do see marketing departments working under the pressure of sales and pretty much reporting to the head of sales. And, it's all about them. You ask them, what are you doing? Oh, we're generating leads for the sales department to follow up on. Well, whereas when you focus your mindset on doing marketing for the customer, it's a completely different ballgame, isn't it? Tactically, you get very you get very different in your approach on how you execute marketing. So that's the reason I was asking. And I mean, my opinion is that it would be more optimal if you go with the mindset of serving the customer rather than sales.
Yeah, I mean, there's two different things: what the customer wants, what the business wants, and they're not always the same thing. Business is there to make money. Sometimes what the customer wants is unrealistic, and maybe if you gave them exactly what they wanted, you wouldn't make any money. So there's that consideration. There's a bit of friction there, right? But what marketing should always be doing is being mindful of where value is created. So if I had to distill marketing function down to first principles, it's like, where is value created and enhanced? Where can I capture value? How can I do it better, faster? Potentially with less resources, or let's simplify the process, for example. So what you're getting to here is generally you need to be mindful of the phase of the business. So the larger the business, the more bureaucracy there is, the less they really care about marketing functions directly supporting the sales process, or even sales outcomes, to be honest with you. It tends to go into this ethereal land of the brand, right? But it becomes more of a support mechanism rather than a sales revenue driver. So generally, though, at a small end of the business, the marketing function is generally seen as very sales outcome focused. Now, the paradox here is that requires a lot more skill as a marketer, which is why everyone thinks marketers are dumb, because you're actually putting them in a harder situation. If you ask any salesperson, is it easy to sell for a big established brand or a smaller one, they'll always say the big one, right? There's just less education, there's innate trust and reputation built up. So I think marketers at smaller companies, which I have done personally, by the way, is a much better training ground, but also way more difficult. Often you're in a state of perfect competition, you've got really restrained resources, you can't reach everyone. So you basically need to be better at your job. And I think that is really hard, because generally those businesses can ill afford someone of that skill set to hire. So you get this kind of eternal disappointment with the marketing function, and then it sort of regresses into this sort of lead gen sort of state, and it goes from there.
Interesting, interesting. And yeah, it's definitely, I mean, for when you're working for a bigger brand, whether you're doing marketing or sales, I mean, just the brand halo carries you, right? You could be shit at your job and you could still kill it. So at the smaller businesses where you get to prove your mettle. So spot on about that. I want to move ahead and I want to talk about something that's really top of mind, not just me, probably a lot of people in the marketing world right now. Content, the role of content. So many people talking, particularly on LinkedIn, about content is the new everything, right? Ads are dead, SEO is dead, everything is dead. So, how do you see the role of content in B2B marketing right now?
Well, like it's very hard to do any type of marketing without any content. First of all, what is content?
Yeah.
Generally, this is where it's come from. It's come from these early SEO days of blog content, right? Which attracted lots of traffic via optimization to the website, which you could then harvest a lead. So it was a longer burn sort of process, but also it was scalable, low cost. And then, of course, social media came around. And then social media, you can't do much on social without content. You need pictures, you need text, you need videos. So then it was sort of like content 2.0. And then obviously the yields from both those things are very low these days or waning. So then it's like content 3.0, which is, okay, let's become a media company. And through a media company, we'll magically, I don't know, game some algorithms and it'll just magically promote itself and distribute itself. And that's the sort of dream that a lot of social media experts and other people will give you. But look, content, it used to be just called creative in the advertising days. So that was shorthand for the artwork or the visuals and copy that you would use for advertising. So it's kind of like that's an old term. Now it's content. I think Gary Vee has a lot to answer for here because that was the word that he used a lot. But for me, it's just text, images, video, and other multimedia that you use to disseminate your message to the market. And that message could be in video form, could be in image form, text form, could be on a phone call. Doesn't really matter. I think why it's topical now, coming back to your question, is because some of these yield from these other channels, digital generally, have diminished quite a bit. And creating your own content tends to be harder to replicate. It can give a really good quality signal to people that, hey, I'm actually I've gone to the trouble of doing this. So it's a high friction activity in itself. So that could be a good quality signal to potential buyers who may want your services. So, and also it's become easier than ever before. So there's AI systems that can create blog posts at the touch of a button. There is generative image programs, video programs now. And a lot of the tools have really come down in price. So you don't need a crazy Adobe suite and editor at $200 an hour to create your own videos. TikTok's a great example of that with their new sort of video editing software that a lot of people use and then just export and put in another program. So I think the barriers to entry will come down to answer the question, and also it is a more defensible position, but it's not appropriate for all situations.
Well, I have actually, I'm very bullish on content. And when I say content, I mean organic social media content. That's what I'm referring to. That's what content is for me. And I'm very bullish on that, particularly from a B2B service standpoint. Like especially in your B2B service business, kind of like myself or yourself, I think I see it as the equivalent of being product-led, right? I mean, we can't, as service business, we can't offer a freemium, right? But we can put out content that actually demonstrates what you're going to be signing up for when you come to us. It's a great indicator of who we are and what we can deliver.
Yeah, I think where I would start with content to answer your question, and in any other business really, is I would start with what we call sales enablement piece, and all that means is a fancy word for things that help the sales process along. So if you're any business, you'll inevitably, if you're exposed to sales at any level or customer service, there are certain questions that people answer and need answered, questions people ask and need answered. FAQs was the first iteration of this on the website, but the point is there's a standard set of like what I call sales objections or things that you need to talk to your prospective customer about and get across. And the point is I always start recommending there because that is going to compress your sales cycle down. It's going to qualify leads quicker and easier, and even if without your interaction. You could put this online or automate the sequence so that a new inquiry comes through at 12 a.m. at night, and they get the sequence of like, hey, these are probably your top 3 questions. Here's a video I've done on all 3, and they go, oh wow, this company actually really knows what my concerns are, but without me even prompting them. Wow, these guys actually know their shit, right? And I'm going to trust them because of that. And those videos are really well produced. And wow, nobody else is doing this. The other 3 people I inquired with didn't do any of this. And, they're going to get back to me in 3 days. I'm going to go with that company. So that's where I see the value of content at a very sales sort of department level. And that's where I think the marketing and sales team can work really well together to produce that content. But then I think broader than that, there's sort of the brand piece as well, which is, kind of what you're doing with the podcast. Is a slow burn, but ramps itself up and establish credibility, and you go from there. So there's 2 ways to cut the content piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking about content, I mean, something that thrives on content is SEO. What are your thoughts on SEO, and particularly on the effectiveness of SEO? How high is SEO in your list of marketing tactics or channels these days?
Well, I mean, that was one of the primary things that I sold when I started the agency back in 2014 or 15. So I'm very well versed in that, and I've seen the evolution over time. Some of my contacts were there when Google came on stage on skates to say, hey, we're Google. And those are some of my mentors back in the day, which is interesting. But it has evolved a lot. It used to be very easy to game. Obviously, like coming back to the growth process, they're taking that feedback cycle of spammers and making it harder and harder and harder, because Google's increasingly monetizing that space for their own properties. And also, they want to sell advertising because that's what they make money off. They don't make money off giving away free traffic, qualified traffic to companies. So it's changed a lot. It's a lot harder. It's increasingly harder. Increasingly relying on a lot of brand signals as well. I think that doesn't get talked about a lot. So a lot of SEO companies will talk about content and links, which are very important, but also the brand piece and the longer term signals of quality and reliability, coming back to reviews and diversity of things and maintenance of the web property and things like that really come into play there. So there's a lot of hidden quality signals that I think maybe don't get talked about as much as others. But I wouldn't expect, generally, now that Google and Facebook are under heavy earnings pressure, I wouldn't expect them to give away any more free or make it any easier anytime soon. So the yield's always going to diminish over time. And you just need to be mindful of that if you have unrealistic expectations about that channel.
Another interesting piece on SEO is that, and I don't have any data to back that up, I'm just purely talking from what I have seen from my own behavior. I've seen my behavior shift and how I use Google, right? It used to be I search something up I don't know about on Google, a blog comes up, I read it, and I believe that's the holy grail. I start executing on it, right? But now it's not like that. So if I know I need to dive deep into something, I'll pass through Google perhaps, but I'll go more into a Reddit community to find that, or maybe a Quora, or maybe I'll go into a community of that particular niche, whatever that is. For example, say B2B marketing or email marketing, I'll find a community and go there. So are you seeing that as a broader change in behavior, or is that just me?
Yeah, I mean, how far back do you want to go? But originally, in the early days, the forums were very big. I remember doing a lot of research on forums. It was a very tight-knit community, and it's a bit static and slow. This is before social media. But the questions are really good because you get. I remember researching camera back in the day, and they're just these other camera enthusiasts, and they just gave the best reviews. And don't get that one. This one's way cheaper. It's better quality. And then we went through this kind of Google content phase, and then social media sprang up, and then you get groups, and then eventually, though, all these sort of things get infiltrated with people, spammers, and the yields diminish, and it goes to the doghouse. Yeah. But I'm with you. It depends what we're talking about here, but it's especially in services. I don't have time to do this, but I know a lot of colleagues that are part of these communities, B2B sales communities. There's heaps of them out there, Substack groups that are paid, Patreon groups that are just full of it's kind of like the new club, if you know what I mean, and people are willing to pay a bit per month to be part of that club. I've set up communities for clients as well from scratch, so I know the power of them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's easier to get answers than ever before. But I think doing the thing and acting on it is a bit of a richer piece that is a bit of free space. I think that sort of information age is over. We can get any information on anything. It's the quality and it's the execution piece that is the harder thing, and maybe that's why you're seeing a bit of a move to those communities.
Exactly, and I think that's what the game of SEO is going to be about as well. If you're going to be producing content, you better be pretty damn good at it. You know, I think that's a challenge. Why, and I think that's why a lot of people are saying that SEO doesn't work anymore, because, well, it does work. It's just the bar has been raised, right? You talked about communities in there. You talked about setting up a few communities in there as well. So that's a perfect segue into the next question. What are your thoughts about community? And there's a lot of talk, especially since Web 3.0 and NFT, the hype around building a community around your business and the narrative has become really high. What are your thoughts on that? How fruitful is it? Because I think like community needs to come from a place of empathy, right? Because if you've got like ulterior motives with the community and you're trying to monetize from that community, the quality of that community is just not going to be that good, and it's not just going to perform very, very well. You're gonna give a lot in order to get something back from the community. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on building a community around the business?
Well, let's start with the question of like why do you want the community? It doesn't really apply to things that aren't a longer term sales cycle or a repeat purchase thing. Like if I'm buying a house, I don't want to join like a house community. If I'm going to buy a house every 10 years, like I'll be in the community maybe for a week and then I'll leave again. So first of all, you need to think from the reverse perspective, like why would someone join your community that you want to build or facilitate? And what's going to keep them there? What keeps them coming back, wanting more, wanting to participate? For me, I think the perfect distinction here is a community is where someone can contribute and give back and also have sort of autonomy over or direction in the community itself, so that there's this push and pull. I think if you think of a community as just like, I want a cheap way of reaching people, like just start a newsletter. You know what I mean? Like that's it's kind of like people think newsletters or a Substack thing is a community. It's not. Like so, a community like is about people contributing to the community, not just in replying to things that you've posted or content you've generated, but also asking them, hey, can you come on this webinar, or can you create a video about this for the other community? So it's this altruistic and egotistical sort of blend, if you know what I mean. So you give and you take, and all people should be generally doing that. I think where people make the mistake here is that maybe it's not appropriate for the product category or whatever they sell. Number two, they underestimate how much time and resources goes into this. So creating that stickiness, creating the content to attract them in the first place, moderating it, filtering out spammers, all that kind of thing. So it shouldn't be undertaken lightly. I think why it's trending right now is because, again, some of these other channels have been, the yields have been diminishing, and they're going, okay, let's just do content, let's do communities. And yeah, that's great, they can work, but they take a lot longer than people, I think, want to admit to, having not done it before, which I have. They're hard to get started, but once you have them and you've got a formula working, they do run away to a certain extent, but they're a constant beast that you need to manage.
Oh yeah, totally. I built a small community myself. It wasn't a very huge community. So I'm originally from Pakistan, and when I came here, I started my business. I built a little community based on Pakistani businesses, small business owners. That's how I started my agency, around that. And man, till this day, like it's a constant thing that I need to monitor and keep in check.
And that's money,
frankly,
right?
The returns are not that great. Exactly. Yeah, frankly, if the returns are not as the worth of the effort, to be honest, if I'm just looking from a monetary or a fiscal standpoint. But the brand, yeah, I mean, everyone knows me in the community now. So yeah, that's nice. You talked about Substack in there. That's something that I've been very keen to check out, and I've listened to a couple of your podcast episodes, so I know you're on Substack. What's your this wasn't the part of the list, but I just want to take your opinion. What's your experience on Substack? How is that? Is it good?
Oh, look, there's heaps of these platforms around. I mean, there's Beehive, which is what's the Morning Brews kind of people. They started that one to create their morning brew thing. There's Patreon, there's Kajabi's platforms. There's all these sort of monetization, sort of turnkey things. But I think what's happened is, you've probably seen this with MailChimp and some of these newsletter programs and email newsletter programs, is they've sort of morphed into a bit of a richer experience where you can have chats, a bit more dynamic sort of back and forth. You can, put your podcast feed in there, richer content, sort of like all these different software products that are merging into each other's domains. And I think Substack has just done that well. They've reduced some of the barriers to that. So a lot of professional writers have been targeted. So professional journalists have been targeted by Substack, who write for major newsletters, and they've used it as a way to sort of have their side gig and monetize editorial content that takes them a long time on the side of their day job. So there's a lot of good people on there. But again, it's just a platform. There's alternatives. And again, it bleeds into other areas. But it's just like a newsletter, a tiny bit on steroids.
The reason I talk about it, the reason I talk about it is because I actually got introduced to the Substack on the Joe Rogan podcast, where their founder was on the Joe Rogan podcast to talk about it. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like a pretty quality platform with some pretty quality contributors. I've been meaning to check it out, but I haven't just found the time to do it. But yeah, cool. You talked about another interesting point, and I think that's something that every marketer is aware these days, the diminishing returns or the difficulty level on different digital channels, and a newborn interest into out-of-home advertising. And I when I sent you that question, you said, I'm big here. So talk to me about it. Are you running any out-of-home, or are you focusing on out-of-home, and how's that going for you?
Yes and no. I mean, I interviewed the CEO of the Outdoor Association of Australia about this topic, about out of home. So I'm pretty well versed. But what came out of that, the TLDR summary, was that back in the day, and this is a really good story, actually, Spotify, obviously, most people do, but do you remember this brand called Pandora, which was actually bigger before Spotify came on the scene?
Yeah.
Okay. So what Spotify did in Australia specifically, and they copied this across the world, was they just came in and just bought out all these billboards and all this outdoor, and everyone was like, who's this Spotify thing? They must be big if they can afford, all these, skyscrapers and these billboards everywhere. Like, who's Spotify? This is really cool. And it sort of built a bit of intrigue. And then that was kind of the catalyst that really, I would say, boosted their growth locally. So I think one of the key points with outdoor is two things, really. One is that it's a statement of ownership of physical real estate. So real estate that is really perceived by customers as expensive and hard to obtain, which it kind of is. I mean, most placements are tens to, $40,000, $50,000 a month, right? So, the barriers to using those are reasonably high, but what it can do is it's kind of like marking a territory like a dog would, right? Like, I am here, I'm big, I'm in the city, I've got a presence. And this really irks back to, our caveman days, where we used signage like Stonehenge and monuments and buildings like that, saying like, wow, we're a big civilization, and like, look at us. And people would be in awe of that, and that is the power of outdoor. Does it generate leads and sales straight away? No. People maybe argue against that. Depends how you execute it, I would say. It is a really good
I've seen a couple of QR codes on some buses, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, what I have seen actually is more leveraging that visual real estate and the social cachet around that, and exclusivity, and then put that creative online and social media, and then that has gone viral. So I know Koala did this very well. I know there's some examples I can say to you. People use that as not the primary effect, and they use the picture of them being on a very prominent billboard as the main channel on other channels. So and that secondary effect in distribution and promotion of those other channels is actually more effective at producing the objective that they want. So I think you need to think about it that way. But yeah, that's my take on
it. And I think to your point where you said it's really expensive, I mean, there are options like digital out-of-home advertising which are making it a lot more affordable. In fact, not just slightly affordable, a lot more affordable, where you can pay by the impression. I think those are some good options for someone who's looking to explore these, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean that's where the industry's that's where it's heading, to be honest. Like, it's more of like a programmatic buy rather than a manual buy. I mean, I used to, at the advertising agency I used to be at, like, I used to have to put this artwork in and then send it off to the large format printer to be printed on a 12 meter by, a 3 meter, or 12 by 6, I think it was, meter billboard. And, we had to make sure the images were at high res and all this kind of stuff. And now it's all digital, which is really cool. But you're right. That's the way it will head. Obviously, these screens are pretty expensive, but the price is always coming down. So, yeah, you're right. It'll be a programmatic buy. But again, I think less about, impressions and stuff like that, and more about a statement of ownership of a particular territory. A lot of tech companies, Canva included, you probably notice at airports and stuff like that, and tech companies are all around that and owning that whole airport, all the bus shelters and things like that, and train shelters. So it's a statement of ownership of a city and an area.
A prominent one that I've been noticing is Active Campaign and HubSpot. They've been covering some trams here in Sydney that run in the eastern suburbs. So, I mean, that's an interesting... When was the last time you were in Sydney and you crossed the Anzac Bridge?
To the North Sydney? That's the Anzac Bridge there, right?
No, so the Anzac Bridge is the one that links the city centre to the Western Distributor. So the Western Distributor to the
wow.
west.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't go over there very often. No, not for a while. What's on there?
Oh, dude, there is this amazing billboard over there. So if you look to the left of Anzac Bridge going towards the city, there's this almost half a kilometer, I would say, long billboard. And so it's really, really long, really stretched. It's not too tall, but it's really wide. And Subway ran a very interesting campaign on that. So they made the whole billboard into a foot long. And it was just one of the most amazing billboard ads that I'd ever seen. So yeah, I've probably got a picture of it. I'll probably share it with you afterwards. So yeah, okay, cool. Okay, I think we've chatted enough about marketing and B2B and all of that stuff. Let's get into the rapid fire. I want to know a couple of personal things. We do this rapid fire session where I ask you a few questions. You got to answer them in maximum 3 words, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first one is a movie or season that you're watching.
A movie or season, did you say?
Yeah, a movie or a season that you're watching.
Ooh, okay. Fall of Civilizations. It's a podcast. You can get it on a podcast or on YouTube. It's about how civilizations rise and fall. It's a really good commentary. It's sort of like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, if you know him. It's kind of like that, but a bit different. And it sends me to sleep every night. But it's really fascinating, and it's just so interesting how... Sorry, this is a long answer, isn't it? But it's really interesting how things change over thousands of years.
Interesting. So what was it? Rise of Civilizations?
The Fall of Civilizations.
Fall of Civilizations, okay. But that's a podcast. You were supposed to tell me about a movie or a season, man.
Well, it is a season thing. Okay, so movie or season. Okay, movie, Ronin.
Ronin, okay,
Ronin,
cool.
Robert De Niro.
Favorite food?
Good. Favorite food? Ooh, well, that's a hard one. Give me a sec here. Give me a sec. Ooh, Petrosian caviar.
Damn, that's fancy, man. Favorite book?
Ooh, very hard again. Maybe the one that I was talking to someone else about today, 0 to 1, Peter Thiel.
Oh, that's cool. It's funny, man. You're taking longer to answer favorite food and favorite movie, but when I ask about B2B marketing, you didn't even blink an eye, man.
Well, it's like, what is my favorite out of thousands that I've consumed? It's kind of like there is no one favorite. I'm not really. There's no standout for me. There's a top maybe 5 or 6, for both of those, but it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Favorite holiday spot?
Somewhere skiing on a mountain.
So, that's a good answer. Favorite brand? Could be anything. B2B, B2C, whatever.
Liquid Death right now.
Liquid Death. I've heard that name. What's that brand
It's
about?
basically water that's in a can, and they've positioned it and packaged it up to make it look as if it's an sports energy performance drink, because professional sports people can't actually, they're quite healthy people, so they don't drink sports drinks. This is full of sugar and stuff like that. They don't do alcohol. So Liquid Death basically is a perfect positioning, like coming back to your former question, it's a perfect example of positioning because it's just water in a can, but it's all the brands, all the communications and stuff that they do. It's hilarious. Go on to YouTube or social media, look at Liquid Death videos. They'll crack you up. It's really good. It's really good marketing too, by the way.
Very. From the sounds of it, definitely, yeah. Cool. A thought leader you follow?
This is hard. I don't really believe in the term, to be honest.
Oh, well, you get the point. Someone who you appreciate as a professional.
Everett Hunda in Melbourne, actually. He's kind of someone I confide and talk to at a pretty high level. Not particularly famous, but very good at what he does.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Favorite marketing channel?
It's like 1 out of 65. Okay. You know
Pick
what?
one, yeah.
You know what? I was at the movies the other day, and movies have been ignored during COVID, obviously, because people haven't been able to go out. But it is probably one of the only mediums right now where you have undivided attention, you can have rich media experience that's geographically targeted, high production value, great sound, great video. I think it's underrated, and get back into cinema.
That's a very smart answer. That's a very good answer. Favorite tool, an app or a software, you could be using it for personal use or business use. What's your favorite tool what's the important tool in your life?
Well, let's say that one that I use a lot that's actually pretty high value. I mean, we're using Riverside right now, which is a sort of almost lossless video recording and audio recording program, which is quite good, which I use as well. But I think Descript, when it comes to editing and cutting up and transcribing things, is something that I use quite a bit, and it's quite good. Although they've kind of gone a bit crazy with the product features recently.
Cool. An unpopular marketing opinion. I think you might have given us that, but let's try that again.
Oh, geez. There is no difference between performance and brand, I think, is the main takeaway. I've got a video on this on YouTube. You should check it out, where I go into more detail and explain it for like 10 minutes. But yeah, I think it's a really key learning there that will reorientate your thinking. I explain why it's a bad dichotomy that doesn't exist and what you can do about it. So yeah, check that out.
Cool. What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your career so far?
Valuable lesson. Wow. I mean, let's just keep it on topic here. Just be really mindful of incentives here. And I think incentives really drive outcomes. So, and I sort of alluded to this a bit about marketers, like, are they incentivized to really produce more revenue? Like, can they be stuffed? You know what I mean? And I think you can put all these policies in place and procedures and blah, 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 and SOPs, whatever. But really, ultimately, the incentives underneath drive that behavior, incentivize that behavior. So be really mindful of what they are, figuring them out. And this really helps you become a better marketer, because what people say is important to them often isn't always the case, because there's layers of politics and personality at the top of that. So really drill down to like and this is very stoic sort of philosophy here, Marcus Aurelius, but like, what is that person? What do they want? What motivates them? And understand that a bit better. And coming back to your word about empathy, is kind of what you're talking about there. So incentives drives behavior is my quip.
Excellent. On topic of marketing, the final question would be, what is your one key piece of advice to an aspiring or upcoming B2B marketer?
Don't think channel first. I think a lot of people rush to tactics, they rush to think about channels, and I see this expressed a lot with like go-to-market strategies or, marketing strategies or growth strategies or whatever, and they start with the channel. And I think my piece of advice is like, start with understanding and a deep understanding of your customer and your target market. do some research piece, and that will then answer those other things that you need to answer, like which channel do I reach them at, like what is the most effective, like, so always reorientate yourself, like do proper market research that isn't based on analytical tools, like call somebody up, have an in-depth interview with them, observe them as they're using or prospecting with your product, and or after they've bought with you, and do another interview. Like that really deep understanding, I think, can be really lost because we can hide behind our computer screens and sort of be a bit detached from what's actually going on. So I think that piece is really good. Just it always starts with the customer and with the market, and not with the channel.
Spot on. I actually did a TikTok video on it that it didn't go viral. I wanted it to go viral, but only 2 people liked it.
maybe people don't like
I said exactly the same.
People don't like listen to the truth, so it's not very popular. You need to be a bit more, you need to intentionally spread mistruths, and that's the stuff that gets popular on social media.
Yeah, but maybe if I put a Kim Kardashian picture on top of that and just my audio, maybe it works. I don't know.
Yeah. Inject something into your lips and
all right, cool, James. Yeah, it could be that. All right, James, thank you so much, man. This was probably really helpful. My intention was to actually cover the basics and fundamentals of B2B and to help people basically see more clearly, and I think you did that really well. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time. Yeah, man, this was really good.
Sounds good. I enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.